Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. This segment, like the other, will do me no joy or give me no joy. You know, it's like there are times, think back when you were a kid to your like high school crush or something like that, and you bump into that person again. That person is in their 30s, and in your head it's still the high school crush that you had back in the whatever days. That's still that 16 or 15-year-old crush that you had. That person is now an adult, completely different person, but in your head that's how they are. I think it's kind of like that with Olbermann. At one point, Olbermann was the resistance. When we were talking about George Bush in that office, Olbermann was a pit bull, and he was a rare voice. And you can make the case that he started bringing in, Rachel Maddow or Cenk Uygur or some of these other people who are on MSNBC. Now, the catch is, and what we didn't know, at least what I didn't know, was that they were only going after Bush because George Bush was a Republican. Now, there is a difference in going after somebody because of their political allegiance versus going after somebody because of some kind of moral thing that's in you that makes you go after that person. There's a stark difference in those things. For example, The Hill comes out with an article, a bombshell article, saying that Hillary Clinton, while she was in the State Department, agreed to do an atomic deal, given 20% of the nuclear stores. Now, this is after the FBI has found information saying that these guys were crooks and criminals and everything else, all of the shady dealings that went into the Soviet, or went into Russia, cornering the market in this way. But it still boiled down to, are you going to approve the deal? Hillary Clinton and Obama pushed or rebuffed any criticism of that particular deal, saying that there was no reason not to do that deal, even though the FBI had a shitload of reasons for them not to do that deal. Now, the bombshell was, yes, some people went to prison, but the person who was in the State Department, her charity, quote unquote charity, that foundation, got 2.75 or 2 point something million dollars immediately after the deal went through, including giving Bill Clinton a speech for $500,000. I do not know what you're saying, but I guarantee you, you're not saying anything that's worth $500,000. You're not going to convince me that it is a coincidence that Bill Clinton gets a check for $500,000 for giving a speech, and the Clinton Foundation gets a donation for 2 point something million dollars immediately after that deal goes through. That looks immensely bad. Think of it this way. If your wife, your girlfriend, your husband, your spouse, whoever it is, you're eating your Cheerios, and they say, by the way, I just got a check for $500,000 for giving a speech. You don't say. Are you telling me that that in no way is going to influence your behavior in regards to access, in regards to the things that you yourself are going to allow? You're trying to tell me that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton has this superhuman level of integrity, that Bill Clinton can get a check for $500,000 for giving a speech, and Hillary Clinton can get a check for $2 million for the Clinton Foundation, but it in no way swayed the decisions that were taking place in that office. This is insane. It was a bombshell because people full well understood they were trying to get access to Bill Clinton with the idea of getting access to Hillary Clinton in the State Department. The FBI turned a blind eye to that part, or at the very least in the investigation itself. The article, however, did not. This is The Hill. This is the most establishment. It's the establishment's establishment. And they're publishing a claim that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton were somehow sullied by this. And they were sullied by it. They got a shitload of money to do a nuclear deal, sell out 20% of our nuclear stores. Bombshell. Immense bombshell. In general, it's a bombshell. Where's the resistance? Is there a certain amount of integrity built into this idea of the resistance? Meaning, is the resistance purely just with this idea of Trump and the Republicans? Or is this resistance based on some level of integrity of, we have a corrupt system that we need to fight against? The point I'm getting at is, I'm not typically fond of telling people what they should have on their show. In fact, I tend to shy away from it. It's your channel. You can have whatever you want. But what's noticeably absent from Keith Olbermann's channel is any word of this at all. This bombshell thing comes out in the news, and an hour ago, Keith Olbermann comes out with, why did Paul Manafort need to get to Trump? A day ago, Donald Trump is fucking crazy. 3 days ago, Donald Trump is the Harvey Weinstein of Washington. Is Mueller trying to stop Trump from pardoning, whatever? I see no mention of it. Are you a newsman? Are you a commentator? What the hell are you? What are you resisting, and when did you start? And does that resistance begin and end with Donald Trump? Even if you wanted to pretend to have some level of integrity, it looked like you would bring up the fact that the person you were supporting, the candidacy of the President of the United States, was getting her hands greased and did a deal that was disastrous for the United States. God, he's fallen so low. Like, it's man. And it's one of those things where it's almost like relative positioning. Like, you can't even see it until you get into a situation where you can see kind of like where the alignment changes. And what I mean by that is, that sounds a little weird, but what I mean by that is, it's certain relative positioning. Like, if you didn't know any better and you were plopped into 2000 whatever, where George Bush was in office, and you had Keith Olbermann and Rachel Maddow, and they were just going after George Bush, and you was like, yes, get him, he's a fucking war criminal, get him. They seem pretty goddamn progressive. They seem pretty lefty in this case. They seem like they're going after this guy with a certain level of integrity. Then Obama gets in office, and they're mum. And Obama is doing many of the similar things that George Bush was doing. Some of the things that these guys were decrying, screaming, and bitching about, that you thought they were going after him for a certain level of integrity, not realizing it was just politics. It's just politics. I hit George Bush because George Bush is a Republican, not because George Bush is doing something that's fundamentally fucked up and wrong. The difference in that is between, yeah, because you would have hit Obama in the same way. In the same way you'd be hitting Trump now. And in the same way you would have turned around and hit Hillary Clinton when you found that they're getting their palms greased. I'm making this point that it kills the argument. People who watch Olbermann and Maddow, you have Democrats who think these guys are awesome and think these guys are telling them, you know, the business of what's going on. That is the most biased shit you would ever come across in your life. They are telling you a very specific narrative in a very specific channel on a very specific thing, and they don't deviate from that wavelength. You can look at the things that Keith Olbermann is talking about, and it doesn't deviate from Trump one iota. He shouldn't even call it resistance. He should just call it fuck Trump. That would have been a better channel name, because that's essentially what his channel is. There is no legitimacy to it in the sense of reality that's taking place. And yes, he may tell you stories that may be true, so don't get me wrong. What I mean is, it lacks context. It's not a situation where Olbermann is giving you stories, you know, across the political spectrum. Olbermann is given one very specific thing and one very specific channel where he's attacking one very specific person. That's the entirety of the channel. The fuck Trump channel. It's amazing. The person he was supporting for president, the person who he was shattered over. And it kills me to say this, because I actually like... It kills me to say this. I can't believe I'm having to go at Olbermann. But honesty, integrity is not a bad thing. How bad is it, or how difficult is it to turn around and say, hey, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton were getting their palms greased, shame on you, and then turn around and say fuck Trump? I'm just saying a certain level of honesty in regards to, it's not just Trump. The problem is both. And if you're going to be honest and you're going to say, I have all of these issues and problems with Trump, then you should have had all those issues and problems with the last administration. And with the person who you were supporting, because she was a goddamn warmonger. It's just amazing. So yes, I don't necessarily like going on somebody's channel and say the person should have X or Y. But if there is any level of integrity to a channel that's talking about news and information and everything else, you would think that at the very least, there will be some deviation when a story and a bombshell comes out that demands a certain level of deviation to talk about that story. An hour ago, and he's hitting Manafort. Manafort may need to be hit, fair enough. Donald Trump may need to be hit, fair enough. But let's stop pretending that is one side. And when you're focused in this way, it makes it look like the other side is goddamn angels. They're not angels. They're not angels at all. Garnome. His narratives are bizarre. He's right up there with Alex Jones now. When people were telling me this, I didn't believe it. Like, people were like, dude, Olbermann has lost his goddamn mind. I was like, no way, man. There's no way. There's no way. It's Olbermann. He's a rock. He was going after George Bush. And then you kind of, like I said, you realize it's not, he's not going after George Bush because of some ideological thing. There may be something there where he just disagrees with Bush and everything else. But ultimately, he doesn't hit the other side. Which means he doesn't understand that the fundamental issue of the problem in Washington is corruption. And if you're not going to go after corruption, regardless of what side it's on, you're a broken clock. It's like, yeah, you're going to get right once or twice just because by virtue of you just going after one side. But you're lying to your audience. You're lying, subjectively lying to your audience. I said this about Rachel Maddow also. If the conversation that we're having is solely with this idea of one party, implicit in this me saying one party gives this kind of idea, well, the other party is somehow better. To what degree is better? And is there a degree where you should even bite? It's implicit lying. I would argue it's implicit lying. Republicans are fucking horrible. But so is the other party. And that party is conspicuously missing from being on his shit list. That's all I mean. Keith Olbermann has become a fucking loon, man. He was out of news biz, then latched onto the resistance bullshit. Yeah. I mean, he comes on when Donald Trump takes office and he's like, we're the resistance. We're the resistance. Covering himself in a flag and whatnot. Where were you in the last 8 years? This is the part that I'm fundamentally missing. We're the resistance. We're the resistance. Okay. Good job. I don't know what you're resisting, but okay. There's a whole lot more pay to play besides that one, although that's a big one. The 85 donors who gave $125 million and all got something in return. Look, I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying this was this bombshell splashy thing that came out in The Hill. You can't look at it and say, oh, this was some lunatic magazine. No, this was The Hill. And it was very clear in The Hill that they were making the point that Bill Clinton got a lot of money. And they passed that deal. Yeah. It isn't dementia. He's bought and paid for the start. This should give anyone who believed in him food for thought. It does. It does. It's like, you know what it's like? It's like supporting Obama in 2008. You have this certain idea, you have this certain impression. And as things go on, the impression just kind of falls from your eyes. Now, in that case, in supporting Obama, it's also a similar thing. It's like, he's not George Bush. Okay, that's a good thing. You're looking at him directly on. As you start to deviate a little bit, you're starting to see, oh, okay, I see. I missed that before. I didn't see that before because the person who I was comparing him to was a fucking monster. He's not that much better. Like, that's essentially the way it goes. With Olbermann, it's the same thing, man. There's no way to know what Olbermann and Maddow was until you got somebody like Obama in 2008. You had nothing to compare it to. Even during the time that Obama took office, for the most part, they just continued to hit Republicans. Didn't matter what he did in that office. They continued to hit Republicans. Olbermann, right now, should have the capacity of hitting both. At one point, he was hitting Julian Assange. And it's like, exactly what are you disagreeing with Julian Assange about? What exactly do you believe that Julian Assange put out that was false? And if you're saying that everything Julian Assange put out was true, then what are you arguing with Julian Assange about? It's fucking amazing. And so it puts this really clear picture that the focal point and the bias here is not based on integrity or honesty or some level of reality with regards to politics and corruption. He's a Democrat. He's an establishment Democrat. He attacks Republicans. That's it. It's one channel. It's one channel. The integrity of it is missing just because there's no belief system that he's ever going to go for the other side for doing something different. He's just an establishment politician who just plays political politics. There's an audience for his rant because people were angry and that let him vent and was cathartic in the way they did in Michael Malloy's weird program at late night. He was busy screaming at his driver and making bizarre demands of his staff. That's what he was doing in Obama years. That's funny. You know, they said he was difficult to be around, like the job thing. Like that's what it said, it was difficult for him to keep his job. I used to love Olbermann's show. Olbermann used to do he used to read from this book. I can't think of the name of it right now. And the stories were absolutely amazing. Some of the best writing that I've ever heard. I mean, that I've heard. And I used to sit there and listen to him read these stories. He used to read those stories to his dad as his dad was passing. And some of his rants going after Bush were amazing and epic. Like on point. Like I said, man, it kills me that. Look, I just wish his channel would have been. If he came back from the wilderness, I wish he would have came back from the wilderness wielding a stick for both, not necessarily a stick for one. They would have understood that the issue in Washington and everything else is corruption, and that the Democratic Party doesn't necessarily represent what they say they represent, and that he could be honest enough to come back and make that case. That's not what took place. Which makes me feel like during the Bush years, that's also what wasn't taking place. He might have hated what Bush was doing, but ultimately he hated him from the perspective of a Democrat, not from this perspective of this kind of guttural thing. Keith Olbermann moved out of his Trump Towers condo in December 2016. I heard, yeah, I know. I heard that one, I know. Friends and acquaintances, there is a future that needs to be thought about, not just, well, this will all be over when we move on. Yeah, that's true. The coastal elites fear of being dethroned by populism. They are running around with their hair on fire. Yeah, the problem is they've stuck their hand in the cookie jar a little too much. Meaning you've created the situation. Well, yeah, you're going to get a populist revolt. You have half the country in poverty. What do you think the half of that country is going to do? The country is going to try to grab some back. You're going to get somebody who's going to be the voice of that population. It's not the Democrats. Bernie Sanders is running around arguing with Ted Cruz and having debates and all this other stuff. So yeah, the populism thing is a real threat. You just needed somebody to articulate it. Brian Nelson. To figure out these guys, all you got to do is look at the salaries. Their jobs is to lie to you. Yeah. Well, yeah, you mean as a politician? Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's a little bit more nuanced than that, but yeah, I agree. I always make this argument that politicians are public relations agents. They need a certain amount of cash to get them in at office. The people who they go to get their cash, they essentially make deals of, look, I am going to represent your interests, but in order to get those votes, I need to do X. Are you still going to give me the money? It's almost like your society is having this meta-narrative between the poor and the rich. What is the poor willing to take? What is the poor willing to deal with? Whatever that line is, that's all they're going to get. Your perspective of who you are and your perspective of your living situation in many respects, meaning from a societal standpoint, is going to dictate your living situation. Nobody in Scandinavia or Denmark or in Europe would allow their country to put $50,000 of debt on their head for going to school. Wouldn't allow it. They wouldn't allow it. They think more of themselves than that. We do not. We do not. Our forefathers have led us astray and have essentially found ways to profit off of kids. It's gross. It's gross. To figure out these, yeah, admittedly there are a few There are a few one-note Johnnies out there who are highly respected. I don't know what you mean by that one. The Robert, this is an argument I've been trying to make to my friends and acquaintances. This is a future that needs to be thought about, not just, well, yes. I love that you said that. So I always thought it was weird that our society just plodded along. Meaning, like, everybody's just kind of doing their own separate thing, and the society is just kind of randomly plodding along. And I used to think to myself, even now, shouldn't this be planned out a little bit better? Like, shouldn't there be some objective or goal that we're working towards? Now, from a practical standpoint, you can see the problem with that. How are you going to make the goal and everything else? I'd argue that the goal would be this kind of betterment of humanity, this kind of increase in public health and everything else. It's off the table. We plod along. We pretend as if the environment isn't real. We pretend as if all of the environmental and ecological degradation is not real. And we plod along. I find that to be absolutely amazing. Like, imagine a situation of, hey, we found an asteroid and the asteroid is going to hit the planet. Okay. We're completely ill-equipped to deal with something like that. We're completely ill-equipped to deal with climate change. And for the most part, 90% of the scientists on the planet agree that it's taking place. It is difficult to make a decision and have the public move in that direction. I got to be honest, I think it's only difficult only from the standpoint that you would need somebody to articulate what that is. If you have some kind of weak, spineless, milquetoast, whatever, it's not going to take place. Your politicians, if they wanted to, if they weren't necessarily being these public relations agents, could move the debate. They can move the debate. When Obama finally came out for gay marriage, all of a sudden gay marriage spiked. Overnight. No, it wasn't overnight. I'm just saying. Him coming out for it changed the debate. It changed the tenor of the debate. Bernie Sanders coming out with Medicare for All changed the tenor of the debate. Coming out with this idea of public college changed the tenor of the debate. They try to pretend as if those things are so out of reach because they don't necessarily want those things to come on the table from the point of debate. They understand that those things can change based upon who's pushing the debate. So, yeah, I agree with you. If at least from the standpoint that I understand what you're saying. I always thought it was a little weird that our society just plodded along, that it wasn't a planned thing. It should be planned to some degree. At least I think it should be. I just suspect the Democrats looked at how the GOP operated and were getting away with it and said, well, we're smarter than them, and if we do the same tricks, we can get more. Agreed. Because this is somewhat of a game theory thing. You have one party that's batshit crazy. You have the other party who says, well, we're not as crazy as them. We're the sane people in the room. They're crazy. We're sane. Vote for us because we're sane. The catch is, being sane is just not enough. And being sane allowed them to get away with shit that they shouldn't have been able to get away with because people was just terrified of the other party. Fear can't be the reason for somebody to vote. If anything, I would say that this idea of being terrified of voting for somebody, the party has continuously moved to the right. And they moved to the right because they understood that the public was terrified of Republicans. Fear can't be the motivator. It has to be something else. Keith Olbermann has suffered brain damage from the rotting cases of men's makeup in the GQ basement. just if people don't know, he's on the GQ network. He's on the GQ network. He's like, the resistance. In my ivory tower, I'm resisting with the American flag wrapped around me. Okay, you do that. You resist in your room by yourself with the camera. Exactly. It's so simple. The fear strategy takes us to the right. Yeah. Because think about it. Think of it from the standpoint of the last election. I love to make this argument because Hillary Clinton people or Bernie Sanders people who voted for Hillary Clinton shy away from it. They hate it. They recoil from me when I make this argument. So I'm going to make this argument again. You swallow everything in you doesn't like Hillary Clinton, and you say, oh my God, Donald Trump is a maniac, I'm going to vote for him. Now, right off the bat, in doing that, you've completely given her a free pass. Hillary Clinton can do anything that she wants in that office because you weren't necessarily voting for something that she was doing. You was voting because you were scared of the other maniac. Now, she gets in office. She exceeds the presidency. There were enough people to trash their morals and their values and put that woman in that office. Information comes out saying that she was being bribed in the State Department, or Bill Clinton was being bribed for favors. That comes out. The uranium deal, saying that she sold off 20%. That comes out. The person who she puts in some office tries to get rid of Social Security or tries to privatize Social Security. Republicans will go along with that. They'll call it tax reform in some way. Let's say she cuts taxes for the rich. Maybe not to the degree that Republicans are, but she cuts taxes. She puts a missile defense shield in Syria. And in doing so, there were multiple skirmishes where we thought we were going to go to war with Russia. 4 years are up. Ted Cruz is running against Hillary Clinton in 2020. She's done everything that you hated. Oh, by the way, she also passed the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, she's done everything that you've hated. And in doing everything that you've hated, now she's running against Ted Cruz. Now, you were able to swallow everything in you because you just hated and was terrified of Donald Trump. The argument in the last election was who's worse, Ted Cruz or Donald Trump, and nobody knew that answer. It just depended upon the day, flip of a coin. She's running against another maniac, a theocrat at that. Does the argument that you made in 2016 still hold true? Meaning, do you still end up making the vote for Hillary Clinton even though she's done everything in that office that you've hated? If that answer is yes, then in perpetuity you're stuck with voting for milquetoast corporate Democrats. And the debate, the conversation moves further to the right because she's dragged you further to the right. The next Democrat that's going to come up is not necessarily going to be a lefty. The same policies and procedures and things that took place with this idea of status quo is going to also be in place then. You're not going to get a primary challenge against Hillary Clinton in 2020 because half of the party is going to go to sleep. You're going to have people like Olbermann who are going to be bad-mouthing people who are saying anything bad about Hillary Clinton. The argument doesn't hold up. That's all I'm getting at. This argument of, okay, I swallow my pride and vote for Hillary Clinton. Yeah, but what are you voting for? You're putting somebody in that office. Even when you're voting against somebody else, you're still putting somebody in that office, and that person you're putting in that office is going to be doing things. If the things that person is going to be doing is going to be shifting the country to the right, then congratulations. You've just shifted the country further to the right. And the next person who comes in with this idea of status quo is going to be further to the right. Don't just take my word for it. Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, Obama, Hillary Clinton. Those were the Democrats. Imagine what Democrats used to be, and imagine what the Democrats have been putting up over the past 20, 30 years. All of those centrist corporate Democrats move further and further and further to the right. And the argument that they consistently made is, we are not what you want, but we're not batshit crazy like them. I just don't think the argument holds. I think you get worse off. Hard call there. Hard call. Put a gun to my head, I will vote Cruz over Hillary Clinton. Can't stand Cruz either. A complete phony. I can't stand Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is fucking terrifying. A, he's a theocrat. B, he has that plastic face where he lies shamelessly. There is no such thing as a Christian conservative. And if you're telling me that you're a Christian and you're a conservative, then I think you're lying to me right off the bat. I think you're lying right off the bat. Your image, the thing that you're wrapping yourself in, is a lie on its face. There is no such thing as a Christian conservative. Jesus was not a conservative. I'm sorry. The moment that we get into this conversation about poverty and everything else, your Christianity melts away. And at that point, you're just an asshole. So, yeah, he's phony. He's completely phony. But most of those guys are phony when they're pushing this Christian conservative garbage. I don't want a theocracy. Yeah, I don't want a theocracy. Put it this way. If there was a chance that I would have voted for Hillary Clinton, it might have been with Ted Cruz. I don't want a theocracy, and I think he is problematic in that office more so than Trump, because I think he can actually get shit done. Trump is clumsy. Ted Cruz is not. He's not. Don't get me wrong, he's fake and phony and difficult to listen to for any period of time. But would he be efficient in getting his agenda accomplished? Oh yes, I think so. I think so. We have a systems of checks and balances that would have prevented that, Bob. To some degree, maybe. To some degree. Maybe. Maybe. D. Martin, Bernie's commitment to incrementalism through the Democratic Party moves us further to the center. There is no such thing as center and right and left and all this other stuff. What do you believe in and what do you want to get accomplished? Right there. That's the conversation. Now, what they're calling the center and all this other stuff is this kind of this thing that they've made up themselves in Washington. I don't know what the center means. I have no clue what that means. I know what I want from an agenda standpoint. I would argue that most of the stuff that Bernie Sanders is talking about is the center, meaning, and I just said there's no such thing as the center. Alright, and let me define my terms. By center, I just mean what the bulk of the American public would go for if they were just asked certain poll questions. No parties involved. You ask a question, you give an answer, and we just base it on that. Let's call that the center. I think, in fact, I would wager that the stuff that Sanders says is probably more towards the center. I would wager that the United States would have ended up more like a Western, one of the socialist democracies in Europe, if it wasn't for some of the events leading up to World War II and everything else. I don't think the American public has moved that far to the right in the way that the Republican Party is to the right. Let me say it that way. I think part of the reason why you have 50% of the public that doesn't vote is because that 50% don't see the point in voting. If you actually represented their interests, guess what? You would get their vote. I think it's insane that 50% of the country doesn't vote, and they just look at it as, we have no idea why they don't vote, so we're just going to assume that we're going to function in a way that excludes those people. And it's like, why are you excluding 50% of the population? It's just mind-blowing to me. Garnome Cruz, please vote for Trump. He punched my wife in the face and sold my daughter to a drug cartel. You've seen that video, right? I have this video in my likes where Ted Cruz is sitting under a Trump Pence sign, and there's this thing where Trump called his wife ugly. Trump said his what did she said? His dad shot Kennedy or helped assassinate Kennedy. It was, Trump just said some really weird stuff, and Ted Cruz, you know, the news is always like, hey, Donald Trump said this. What do you have to say to Donald Trump? And they asked him, are you going to support Donald Trump? After Donald Trump has said all these things about your wife and your family, are you going to support Donald Trump? He's like, I'm going to beat him. You didn't win, dude. You lost. And not just lost, you had the indignity of sitting under a Trump Pence sign while on the phone banking for Donald Trump. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. That's one of my favorite videos. It's one of my favorite videos. Yeah, it was like his dad was a Cuban spy that helped kill Kennedy. It was insane. It was so insane. But it was insane to the point where it was just fucking hilarious. Now, I would imagine if you're Ted Cruz and somebody call your wife ugly, put it this way. If you say anything bad about Miss Thomas and we're in politics, you're not getting my support. I don't give a shit what party you're in. I will be actively working for the other party to tank your ass. Now, I understand that Ted Cruz had a bunch of money. Ted Cruz doesn't love his wife to the degree that I love my wife. They can fuck off with those millions of dollars. If you're saying bad shit about Miss Thomas, you're not getting my support. You would not have me sitting under anybody's sign after saying something bad about my wife. But like I said, Ted Cruz didn't love his wife that much, so he was sitting under Trump and sign phone banking for Donald Trump. And Gardner, I love the fact that he was humiliated. He deserved that and much more. Me too. That's why I said it's my favorite video. It's one of my favorite YouTube clips. It's awesome. He's just sitting there. The indignity. Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. It's painful. It's absolutely painful. Alright, this is what it's 35. I think there's there's like 1 or 2 more videos that I want to do, so I don't want to go this too long. I just wanted to highlight the Olbermann thing. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that. Like, okay, there was this bombshell report about Hillary Clinton. Is Olbermann going to say anything? No, he's not. He's not. $50 that tomorrow or the day after, Olbermann's going to make a video about Trump. Now, I could be a psychic, and I'm betting on whether or not I'm a psychic, on whether or not Olbermann makes this thing about Trump. I could be badass psychic if the only thing I had to guess was whether or not Olbermann was going to do a video bashing Donald Trump. Why would I vote when it was rigged and my vote doesn't count and it just makes me buy into the system? It forces you into tribalism and makes people defend their choice. Yes, but that's not fully contextualized. So yes and no. I guess my feeling was yes and no. My wife hates when I say that, yes and no. Yeah, yes and no. If we're playing chess and I move e4 is a pretty decent move. E4 allows you to take control of the center, and it allows you to essentially blockade whatever black is pushing in regards to his move. That being said, E4 does loosen my king position. It does loosen my king. It does open my queen and king up for attack, particularly if we're talking about the F7 pawn. There is no such thing as a move without a consequence. Doesn't exist. Now, the reason I say that is, yes, voting does kind of do this tribalism thing. But what other apparatus do you have that is going to allow you to choose who takes power? Now, I would agree with you that this kind of anarchist style of organization is probably better and more ideal if we're talking about just us human beings interacting with one another. Get rid of many of these laws and all this other stuff. So, fair enough. I agree. But in any capacity, you're going to need some way of choosing, of making a choice. Who do you want to represent your interests? The problem and the tribalism comes in just from us as being human beings and people. Now, that doesn't have to be that way. It's the way we organize ourselves. We organize ourselves in this kind of cockfight way where we're going at each other's. I am not so bothered by that. That's more of an us thing. That's not a... Like, that's not inherent to the system itself. That's more so us as human beings. We're in the system where everything is just kind of competitive thing. So politics becomes blood sport. You're not necessarily trying to choose somebody to run the government at that point, or you don't even care who wins. You care about whether your side wins. It becomes this kind of blood sport thing. So I agree with you on that point. But that's a us thing. I think that's a us thing. That's not a political apparatus thing. If your society was different, you could have a society where this process is not as adversarial as it is. That's not what we have. That's not what we have. Olbermann doing a video on Trump, huh? I'm assuming yes. That's my psychic prediction for tomorrow. Yeah. Synopsis: Keith Olbermann's a delusional asshole. Yes, that's pretty much what this was about. That's pretty much what this was about. And look, it's not that Olbermann's lying in his videos. I don't watch enough of his videos to know whether he's lying. It's the very specific focus, despite all of this other shit taking place. You just had this bombshell article saying that the Secretary of State, that her husband was getting his hands greased at the exact same time when she was making a choice on a nuclear deal that was going to sell 20% of the uranium stores to what she said was one of the biggest threats on this planet. Crickets. Crickets. That's the synopsis. Yes, Cardinal. That's the synopsis. Someday, I hope in my lifetime. I don't know what that was in reference to. Oh, I see what you mean. Look, if you had a lot of people who were focused on the political apparatus, and beyond that part, I don't know how you get to a less adversarial system. At the very least, in our current system, you have so much inequity built into the way things are. You have people who are just fighting for scraps. And when you have those people fighting for scraps and trying to, make their way into the world in that sense, yeah, you're going to get this angry, adversarial public. They feel that their livelihoods have gotten worse. And they're right. Their livelihoods have gotten worse. They feel that their lot in life has become more difficult. And they're right. Their lot in life has gotten more difficult. Now, some of those people externalize that into a wrong direction, so they want to punch down and punch immigrants and all this other stuff. But acknowledge that that's what's taking place. It's not that these people are kind of frenzied and all this other stuff just for the sake of being frenzied. No, there's a context. There's a societal factors that are acting on them that's pushing a particular behavior. This is not necessarily indicative of it's just how human beings are. Human beings can act this way in a particular system, yes. But in a different system, people will behave differently. If you had different societal pressures, people will behave differently. This is just the way we've arranged ourselves. We've arranged ourselves into this kind of cockfight existence where you have to fight to survive. So yeah, people act belligerent. All right. I'm running my mouth. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, and subscribe. And of course, you can always support the Patreon. Thanks guys.